Pakistan's reportedly considering imposing a tax on US and NATO supplies going to Afghanistan through its territory. The route was shut down last month after a cross-border NATO airstrike killed 24 Pakistani soldiers. The tax would increase the huge cost, of course, of the US-led campaign in Afghanistan. Let's discuss its implications with author and journalist Webster Tarpley, joining us on the line from Washington, D.C. Webster, good evening. The Pakistani foreign minister said the country will fight the war on terror on its own terms and conditions. Is that what this reported tax plan is all about then? And indeed, are we likely to see any more moves from the Pakistani side?
I would say this idea of a tax is a cheap trick to provide political cover for Pakistani politicians who want to cave in and appease the United States one more time. The original idea was, since the United States killed 25 Pakistani soldiers, I think deliberately, that was basically the end of it. No more transit rights across Pakistan. Now, the idea of a tax may sound like something radical, but it's really not radical. It's a way to get this flow of military supplies going. I would suggest we ought to go back to, how did this start? This is about 10 years ago. There was an ultimatum delivered in the wake of 9/11 by Colin Powell and Richard Armitage to the Pakistani government, at that time Musharraf. And they said, if you don't give us transit rights across Pakistan, we will bomb you back into the Stone Age. So this is not an alliance. This is not friendship. This is the United States having gone in there. And the goal of the U.S. presence had very little to do with terrorism or these fantastic stories that the U.S. government tells, but rather had to do with promoting the breakup of Pakistan. If you just look at the map, Pakistan is wedged in there between Iran on the one side, India and China. In some ways, it's the hub of the world. It's called Pipelineistan, or the Pakistan Energy Corridor. And the goal of the U.S. has always been to take a civil war in Afghanistan, export it into Pakistan, break it up according to the lines of Sindh, Punjab, Baluchistan, Waziristan, and all the rest, shatter Pakistan. They've even tried now in the last couple of weeks to do it on Sunni Shiite basis, setting up car bombs and things like this. I would say the hand behind all this remains that of General Petraeus, who now operates out of essentially the White House, the Principals Committee. Panetta, Hillary, Donelan, Holder, but Petraeus, I think, is the guy who's making the military policy, while Obama is largely a ceremonial figure concerned with his own re-election. OK, that's the grand plan as you see it. But taking this proposed tax on face value, if it is imposed, what sort of a blow would it be to America? I think it would be trivial. It would be $40 or $50 million a year, and this doesn't mean anything, right? They can just they can print that or borrow it. But the question is, where is all this going? The Pakistanis are becoming more militant, which is perfectly understandable, right? We have a manic mood here in Washington. I guess you can call it a psychosis of destabilization. It's like the year of the dupes may be ending, and they've got to export destabilization to as many countries as they can. Interesting is that the Pakistanis say now that they have a surface-to-air missile system along the border with Afghanistan, so that if the U.S. tries to come over with helicopters and essentially take possession of the Pakistani nuclear deterrent, the Pakistanis now say that they would be able to fight back against that. So this is, I think, an exercise in the insanity that's going on here in Washington. The United States could compete for economic development, but they've essentially taken themselves out of that game, and the only thing left is disruption.
More comments from the Pakistani side. The Pakistani PM Gilani said that the country wouldn't tolerate any more attacks like that NATO one that killed 24 Pakistani soldiers. I'm sure everyone's hearing what he's saying, but how can NATO ever guarantee that would be the case, that there won't be any further attacks?
Well, they can't, because, the whole logic of the NATO and U.S. presence is to bust up Pakistan. And the reason that these attacks are staged is that when they're staged, they tend to discredit, to humiliate, to mortify the Pakistani government, to make them look feckless, inconsequential, foreign stooges, and all the rest. So this is part of a destabilization strategy. The one thing that they fear here in Washington, Are there some Nasserist colonels, some middle-level officers in the Pakistani military who are sick of all this and who might want to assert Pakistani nationalism against all of this foreign interference? I think that's the thing the State Department fears most.
It's very good to have your analysis on it, author and journalist Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Thank you.